The jury changed the verdict after hearing this recording. The courtroom was silent when the judge nodded. "Play the recording," he said. The bailiff pressed a button. A voice filled the room. It was low, calm, clear. "I didn't mean to kill her," the voice said. "I just needed her to stop talking." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. One juror covered her mouth. Another leaned forward in his chair, eyes wide. The woman who had been sitting stiff and proud at the defense table suddenly went pale. Her name was Laura Mitchell. Just minutes ago, the jury had been ready to say not guilty. Now, everything was changing. The recording kept playing. "She fell," the voice continued. "I didn't push her that hard." The judge raised his hand. The recording stopped. The room buzzed with shock. The jurors looked at each other, and then the foreman slowly stood up. "Your Honor," he said, his voice shaking, "we need to speak." Laura Mitchell's lawyer jumped to his feet. "No," he said, "this is not—" But it was too late. The jury had heard the recording, and the verdict they were about to give was no longer the same. But where did this recording come from, and how did it stay hidden for so long? 3 months earlier, Laura Mitchell was not sitting in a courtroom. She was sitting in her kitchen, sipping coffee, watching the morning news. Laura was 38 years old. She lived in a quiet town in Ohio called Ridgewood. She worked as an office manager. She waved to her neighbors. She volunteered at church events. To everyone around her, Laura was normal, friendly, safe. That's why no one believed what happened next. The victim's name was Rachel Thompson. Rachel was 31. She was loud, funny, and not afraid to speak her mind. She lived in the apartment below Laura's. They did not get along. It started small. Music too loud, trash left in the hallway, a door slammed too hard. Then the notes began. "Please keep it down," one note said. "Stop banging on my ceiling," said another. People in the building heard them argue more than once. Nothing violent, just angry words. Until the night Rachel died. It was raining hard that evening. Thunder shook the windows. Most people stayed inside. Around 10:30 p.m., someone called 911. The caller said there had been an accident. Police arrived to find Rachel at the bottom of the stairwell. Her neck was twisted at a strange angle. Blood stained the concrete floor. Laura stood nearby, shaking. "She slipped. She fell. I tried to help her." The police asked questions. Laura cried. She hugged herself. She said Rachel had been yelling, that she tried to calm her down, that Rachel lost her balance. There were no cameras in the stairwell, no witnesses, just Laura's story. Rachel was taken to the hospital. She died an hour later. At first, police treated it as a terrible accident, but then the medical report came back. Rachel's injuries did not match a simple fall. There were bruises on her arms, fresh ones. The case changed overnight. Laura Mitchell was arrested and charged with murder. The town of Ridgewood split in half. Some people said Laura was innocent. "She's not that kind of person. She wouldn't hurt anyone." Others were not so sure. Rachel's sister, Megan Thompson, stood outside the courthouse the day Laura was charged. "She killed my sister," she said through tears, "and she's lying." The trial moved fast. Laura pleaded not guilty. Her lawyer said there was no proof, no weapon, no witnesses, no video, just a fall. The prosecution argued that Laura pushed Rachel during an argument, but they had a problem. There was no clear evidence, no fingerprints, no camera, no confession. Weeks passed. The jury listened to every word. They heard about the notes, the arguments, the bruises. They also heard Laura speak. She took the stand and cried. "I tried to help her," she said. "I would never hurt Rachel." Some juries believed her. By the end of the trial, things were leaning her way. The jury went into the room to decide. Outside, Rachel's family held hands and prayed. Inside, the jurors talked quietly. "It feels wrong," one juror said. "But there's not enough proof." Another nodded. "I don't see murder." Hours passed. They were close to a verdict, not guilty. Then, something unexpected happened. A young police officer named Evan Brooks rushed into the courthouse. He had not been part of the case, not until that morning. Evan worked in the evidence room. He was new, careful, curious. That day, he had been going through old digital files from the apartment building, a broken intercom system, old maintenance logs. And then he found something strange, an audio file. It was labeled with a date and time, the night Rachel died. The file was short, just over 2 minutes. Evan played it. His blood ran cold. It was not music. It was not static. It was a voice. 2 voices. An argument. Raised voices. And then a scream. Evan didn't wait. He took the file straight to his supervisor. Within an hour, the judge was called back into court. The jury was brought out of their room. Laura sat at the defense table, confused. Her lawyer whispered to her, trying to calm her. The judge looked serious. "Members of the jury," the judge said, "new evidence has been discovered." Rachel's sister leaned forward. The bailiff rolled in a small speaker. Laura shook her head. "I don't understand," she whispered. The judge nodded to the bailiff. "Play the recording." And that was the moment everything changed. The voice came from the speaker, clearer than anyone expected. Laura's voice, angry. "I'm tired of you. You never stop." Rachel's voice answered, "Get away from me." The sound of movement followed, a sharp breath. Then Laura's voice again, "I didn't mean to." The jurors listened, frozen. The room felt smaller. The truth pressed in from every side. When the recording stopped, no one spoke. Not the lawyers, not the judge, not Laura. The jury looked at each other, knowing what they had just heard. And that was when the foreman stood up. "Your Honor," he said, his voice shaking, "we need to speak." Laura Mitchell's lawyer jumped to his feet. "No," he said, "this is not—" But it was too late. The jury had heard the recording, and the verdict they were about to give was no longer the same. But Laura felt the room spin, her chest tighten, her hands tremble, because the recording was only the beginning, and what came next would seal her fate forever. Laura Mitchell sat very still at the defense table. Her lawyer whispered to her, but she did not answer. Her eyes were fixed on the speaker that had played the recording. It was small, black, silent now, but it felt louder than anything else in the room. The judge cleared his throat. "Members of the jury," he said, "you will return to the jury room and continue your discussion." The jurors stood slowly. No one looked at Laura as they walked past her. That hurt more than anything. Just hours ago, some of them had smiled at her. Now they would not even meet her eyes. Rachel Thompson's sister, Megan, began to cry quietly. Her hands shook as she held her mother's arm. Laura's lawyer stood up fast. "Your Honor," he said, "this recording could be edited. We don't know where it came from. We don't know—" "The jury will decide how much weight to give it," the judge said firmly. The gavel hit the desk. Court was in recess. Laura was led to a small room behind the courtroom. It was cold and bare. A single table, 2 chairs. Her lawyer, David Collins, sat across from her. "You didn't tell me about a recording," he said. "I didn't know about it, I swear." David leaned back. "Laura, that voice sounds exactly like you." She shook her head. "I was angry that night, yes, but I didn't kill her." David rubbed his face. "The jury heard you say, 'I didn't mean to kill her.'" Laura's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't finish the sentence," she said. "I didn't mean to hurt her." David didn't reply. Outside, the jury room was tense. The foreman, a middle-aged man named Henry Walsh, sat at the head of the table. "Let's talk," he said. "We were leaning not guilty before this." A woman across from him shook her head. "That recording changes everything." Another juror spoke up. We don't know the full story, but we know there was a fight, and we know she lied." The room fell quiet. They played the recording again. This time, the words felt heavier. "I just needed her to stop talking." A juror whispered, "That's not an accident." Hours passed. Back in the courthouse hallway, Rachel Thompson paced back and forth. "She killed her," Megan said. "I know it." Her mother held her hand. "Just wait," she whispered. "Justice takes time." Meanwhile, Detective Paul Reynolds sat in his office, staring at his computer screen. He was the lead detective on the case, and something about the recording bothered him. Not the voices, the timing. The file had come from the apartment building's old intercom system, the same system everyone said was broken. "How did this get saved?" he muttered. Paul called Evan Brooks, the young officer who found the file. "Walk me through exactly where you found it," Evan explained. "It was hidden deep in a backup folder, almost like someone tried to delete it but didn't finish." Paul leaned forward. "Could someone have accessed the system after Rachel died?" Evan hesitated. "Yes, the building manager had access." Paul's jaw tightened. The building manager's name was Carl Denton. Carl had testified earlier in the trial. He said the intercom system had not worked for years. Paul suddenly wasn't sure that was true. He grabbed his coat. While the jury debated, Paul drove to Carl Denton's house. It was a small place on the edge of town. Paul knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. Paul walked around back. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Paul called out, "Mr. Denton, police." No response. Then he saw it. A laptop open on the kitchen table. Audio software was on the screen, and on the timeline, the same recording. Edited. Paul's heart began to pound. At that moment, his phone rang. It was the courthouse. "The jury is close to a decision," the clerk said. Paul looked at the laptop again. If this recording had been edited, then the truth was not complete. Paul grabbed the laptop and rushed out. Back at the courthouse, Laura sat alone in a holding cell. She stared at the wall. She thought about Rachel, their fights, the shouting, the way Rachel looked at her that night. Laura pressed her hands against her ears. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way," she whispered. The door opened. David stepped inside. "They're almost ready," he said quietly. Laura stood. "What are they going to say?" David didn't answer. In the jury room, Henry stood up. "Let's take a vote," he said. Hands went up, one by one. "Guilty, guilty, guilty." Henry swallowed hard. "Let's return to the courtroom." The jurors filed out. Everyone stood as they entered. Laura felt dizzy. This was it. The foreman handed the paper to the bailiff. The bailiff passed it to the judge. The judge looked down. Before he could speak, the courtroom doors burst open. Detective Paul Reynolds rushed in, holding a laptop. "Your Honor," he shouted, out of breath, "we need to stop this." Gasps filled the room. The judge slammed his gavel. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. Paul stepped forward. "The recording the jury heard may not be the full recording." Laura's heart skipped. Rachel's sister stood up. "What are you saying?" Paul took a breath. "I believe someone edited that audio, and the original version tells a very different story." The courtroom erupted. The judge raised his hand for silence. "Can you prove this?" the judge asked. Paul nodded. "Yes," he said, "and the full recording is right here." Laura felt her knees weaken, because if the full recording played, it could either save her life or destroy it completely. The courtroom buzzed like a shaken beehive. People whispered. Reporters leaned forward. The jurors stared at Detective Paul Reynolds as if he had just dropped a bomb in the middle of the room. The judge slammed the gavel again. "Order," he said loudly. "Order in the court." Laura Mitchell stood frozen at the defense table. Her legs felt weak. Her heart was beating so fast she thought she might faint. The full recording. Those words echoed in her head. The judge looked at Paul. "Detective Reynolds, approach." Paul stepped forward and placed the laptop on the clerk's desk. "Explain," the judge said. Paul took a deep breath. The recording the jury heard came from the apartment building's intercom system. That system automatically saved audio when voices reached a certain volume. What Officer Brooks found was not the original file. It was edited. A gasp swept through the room. Laura's lawyer jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, if this evidence was altered—" "Sit down," the judge said. "You will have your turn." The judge turned back to Paul. "Who edited it?" Paul nodded slowly. "The building manager, Carl Denton." Murmurs broke out again. Rachel's sister Megan shook her head. "Why would he do that?" Paul answered calmly. "Because Carl Denton was trying to protect himself." The judge narrowed his eyes. "Go on." Paul clicked a button on the laptop. A screen appeared in the courtroom monitor. It showed audio software with sound waves moving across the screen. "This is the full recording, uncut, untouched." Laura held her breath. The judge looked at both lawyers. "Any objections?" The prosecutor hesitated, then said quietly, "No, Your Honor." Laura's lawyer nodded. "Play it." The judge turned to the bailiff. "Play the full recording." The room fell silent. The audio began. At first it sounded the same, raised voices, Laura and Rachel arguing. "I told you to stop," Laura's voice said, sharp and angry. "You don't own this place," Rachel snapped back. Then something new appeared. A third sound. Footsteps. Heavy footsteps. Laura's eyes widened. That had not been in the first recording. The audio continued. "Hey," a man's voice said. "What's going on out here?" Laura gasped softly. She recognized the voice. Carl Denton, the building manager. "What are you doing here?" Rachel asked. "I got a complaint. You two are causing problems." The argument grew louder. Then a loud bang. Rachel screamed. The sound was sudden, sharp, terrifying. "Oh my God," Laura's voice cried. "She fell." The recording continued. "She slipped," Laura said, panicked. "She slipped, Carl." There was a pause. Then Carl's voice, low and cold. "Don't say anything else." The courtroom froze. Carl's voice continued. "If this comes back on me, I'm done. Do you understand?" Laura's breathing could be heard on the recording, fast, shaky. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she sobbed. "I didn't mean to hurt her." Carl spoke again. "Listen to me. We'll say it was an accident. I'll take care of the rest." The audio stopped. Silence filled the courtroom. No one moved. No one spoke. Laura collapsed back into a chair, tears streaming down her face. That's not how it was played before," she whispered. The judge removed his glasses. "This court has just heard evidence that was deliberately altered. This is extremely serious." Rachel's sister Megan was crying now, her hands shaking. "So my sister, she didn't confess to murder?" Megan asked, her voice breaking. Paul shook his head. "No, she confessed to being there during an accident." The prosecutor stood slowly. "Your Honor, this changes the case." "Yes, it does." He turned to the jury. "Members of the jury, you were presented with incomplete evidence earlier. You will return to the jury room and consider the full recording." Laura looked up at them. Some jurors looked stunned. Others looked angry. All of them looked conflicted. As the jury left the room, Laura buried her face in her hands. Her lawyer leaned close. "This helps you," he whispered. "A lot." Laura nodded weakly, but Detective Paul Reynolds was not smiling. He stared at the screen, at the sound waves. Something still felt wrong. Outside the courtroom, officers were already on the move. Carl Denton's house was surrounded. Police knocked loudly. "Carl Denton, open the door!" No answer. They forced the door open. The house was empty. In the kitchen, the laptop Paul had seen earlier was gone. So was Carl. Back in the courtroom, the judge ordered a short recess.
Laura was led back to the holding room. Her hands were trembling, but for the first time in days, she felt a small spark of hope. "I told the truth," she whispered. "I told the truth." Her lawyer nodded. "Now we need to prove the rest." Across the building, Rachel's family sat together in silence. Megan stared at the floor. "So he lied. He let us blame the wrong person." Her mother nodded slowly. "But Rachel is still gone." Back in the jury room, the mood was heavy. Henry Walsh spoke first. "We were ready to convict her." A juror shook her head. "Because we were tricked." Another juror said, "That manager knew more than he said." They played the full recording again. This time, the words hit differently. "She slipped. Don't say anything else. Let me handle it." The truth felt closer now, clearer, but also more frightening, because someone had tried to control the story, and that someone was still free. In the hallway, Detective Paul Reynolds spoke urgently into his phone. "He's on the run. Yes, I want an alert out now." Paul hung up and leaned against the wall. If Carl Denton was willing to edit evidence, what else had he done? Suddenly, Paul's phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen. A text message. Unknown number. It read, "You should have left it alone." Paul's blood ran cold. At the same moment, inside the jury room, Henry stood up. "I think we all know this isn't what we thought." Heads nodded, but before they could take another vote, a loud dang echoed through the courthouse, a sharp cracking sound. People screamed, the lights flickered, security shouted, and someone yelled the words that froze everyone in place. "Gun!" Laura's heart dropped, because whatever was happening now was far from over.
The scream echoed through the courthouse. "Gun!" People dropped to the floor. Chairs scraped loudly. Someone knocked over a water pitcher and it shattered across the tile. Laura Mitchell was pushed back into the holding room as deputies rushed past her. "Stay down!" an officer shouted. Laura's heart felt like it was about to burst out of her chest. She crouched in the corner, her hands over her head, shaking. Outside, chaos filled the hallway. Detective Paul Reynolds ran toward the sound. His hand was on his radio. "Where is the shooter?" he shouted. A deputy pointed down the hall. "Near the side entrance." Paul sprinted forward. The courthouse doors burst open. A man stood there, breathing hard, holding a gun. It was Carl Denton. His eyes were wide, wild, desperate. "I just wanted it to stop!" Carl shouted. "I didn't mean for any of this!" Officers raised their weapons. "Drop the gun, Carl!" Paul yelled. Carl laughed, a broken sound. "You already ruined me!" He took a step back. Another. Paul's heart pounded. "Carl," Paul said firmly, "it's over. Don't make this worse." Carl's hand shook. Then the gun slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a loud clatter. Officers rushed in, tackling him, cuffing his hands. The danger was over. Slowly, people began to stand up. Inside the courtroom, the judge returned to the bench, his face pale but steady. "Court will resume," he said. Laura was brought back in. Her knees felt weak, but she forced herself to stand. Carl Denton was led in next, handcuffed, his head hanging low. The judge looked at him. "You were charged with tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, and witness intimidation." Carl said nothing. The jury returned to their seats. They looked shaken but focused. The judge turned to them. "You have heard all the evidence, including the full recording and today's events. You will now deliver your verdict." The foreman, Henry Walsh, stood up. His hands were steady now. "Your Honor, we have reached a verdict." Laura closed her eyes. Henry took a breath. "In the case of Laura Mitchell," he said slowly, "we find the defendant not guilty." The words hung in the air. Laura gasped. Tears rushed down her face. She covered her mouth, unable to speak.
Her lawyer squeezed her arm. Rachel's family cried too, this time not in anger, but in pain mixed with understanding. The judge raised his gavel. This court recognizes that the truth was hidden, but today it has come to light. He turned to Carl Denton. And you will answer for what you did. Carl stared at the floor. Outside the courthouse, the air felt different, lighter. Laura stepped out into the sunlight, blinking. She was free, but she did not smile. Detective Paul Reynolds approached her. "You're cleared," he said quietly. "I'm sorry it took this long." Laura nodded. "Rachel is still gone." Paul nodded back. "Yes, but now we know how it really happened." Across the street, Rachel's sister Megan watched Laura. Laura walked over to her slowly. "I'm sorry," her voice breaking, "for everything." Megan studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "I know. Now I do." Police cars pulled away. Reporters packed up their cameras. The courthouse grew quiet again. That night, the recording was played one last time in evidence storage, filed correctly, sealed, and marked complete. It had changed everything. It turned lies into truth. It stopped an innocent person from being blamed forever. And it proved one powerful thing. Sometimes justice is only one recording away. The jury changed the verdict after hearing this recording, and nothing would ever be the same.